Millionaire sees three homeless 6-year-old girls begging for food. Identical to his first love, he froze. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The gleaming tower of Reynolds Financial stood like a monument to success against the Manhattan skyline. On the 60th floor, Damian Reynolds loosened his Italian silk tie as he gazed out over the city he commanded. At 45, he had everything money could buy, except what truly mattered. "Mr. Reynolds, the Wilson acquisition paperwork is ready for your signature," his assistant called from the doorway. Damian nodded, allowing himself a rare smile. Another billion-dollar deal sealed, another victory for the empire he'd built from his family's already substantial foundation. "I'll walk back to the office, tell them I'll be there in 20, he replied, suddenly craving fresh air despite the October chill. The streets of Manhattan pulsed with their usual frenetic energy as Damian strode confidently through the crowds. People unconsciously moved aside for him. Something about his presence, his perfectly tailored suit, or perhaps the cold intensity of his Arctic blue eyes. He was cutting through Madison Square Park when he noticed them. Three tiny figures, huddled near a hot dog cart. Three identical little girls, no more than 6 years old, their coats worn but clean, their dark hair pulled into matching ponytails. Something about them made him slow his pace. "Please, sir, we're very hungry," one of the girls was saying to the vendor. "We can help clean up after," the man scowled. "No money, no food, now scram before I call security." The smallest girl's face crumpled, but the one who seemed to be their leader stood straight. "Come on, Madison Taylor, we'll find something at home." Something twisted in Damian's chest. Before he could analyze the impulse, he approached the cart. "3 hot dogs with everything," he told the vendor, pulling out his wallet, "and whatever these young ladies would like to drink." The girls froze, looking up at him with identical expressions of surprise, and that's when it happened. The moment that would forever divide Damian's life into before and after. Their eyes. Crystal blue, with a distinctive starburst pattern around the pupils. His eyes. The same eyes that had stared back at him from every mirror, the same eyes that had marked Reynolds family members for generations. "Thank you, mister," the leader said cautiously, accepting the food. "I'm Harper. These are my sisters Madison and Taylor." Damian couldn't breathe. Their faces, now that he really looked, were a perfect blend of his own features and Stephanie's. Stephanie Bennett, his college sweetheart. The woman he'd accused of infidelity 6 years ago when she'd announced her pregnancy. Something he'd believed biologically impossible due to his diagnosed sterility. "Are you okay, mister?" The quiet one, Madison, asked, tilting her head curiously. "I'm fine," he managed, his voice strangled. "Where's your mother?" The girls exchanged glances. "She had to go away for a while," Harper said carefully. "Mrs. Patel is watching us." An elderly woman called from across the street. "Girls, come now." "We have to go." "Thank you for the food," Taylor chirped, offering a gap-toothed smile that was pure Stephanie. As they hurried away, Damian remained frozen, his world tilting on its axis. 6 years, 3 daughters, his daughters. What had he done? Damian's penthouse felt cavernous and empty as he stumbled inside, his hands still trembling. The billion-dollar acquisition, the board meeting he'd missed. None of it mattered anymore. Those eyes, their faces, the impossible truth staring back at him. He poured himself a scotch, not bothering with ice, and downed it in one burning gulp. 6 years ago, he had made a decision that apparently altered the course of multiple lives, his own included. Impossible, he whispered to his reflection in the window, Manhattan's glittering skyline spread out beyond. But even as he said it, he knew. Those were his daughters. With unsteady steps, Damian moved to his bedroom closet. Behind designer suits and rows of Italian shoes sat a lockbox he hadn't opened in years. The combination came to him automatically, 10/24/16, Stephanie's birthday. Inside lay the remnants of a life he'd abandoned, photos of a younger Damian with a beautiful woman with chestnut hair and sparkling green eyes, Stephanie Bennett. His first real love, before ambition and family expectations had hardened him. He picked up a small velvet box containing the ring he'd never given her. They'd talked about marriage once, before the diagnosis. "You have an extremely low sperm count, Mr. Reynolds," the specialist had explained. "Functionally speaking, you're sterile. Natural conception would be virtually impossible." The news had devastated him, the Reynolds legacy potentially ending with him. Stephanie had been supportive, discussing alternatives for their future family. But then, barely 3 months later, "I'm pregnant, Damien," she'd said, eyes shining with unexpected joy. "The doctor said it's a miracle, but it's happening." Instead of joy, he'd felt betrayal. The math didn't add up. It couldn't be his. His family's wealth, his trust issues born from previous gold diggers. They'd all converged into a perfect storm of suspicion. "Who is he?" he'd demanded. The memory of her face, shock giving way to hurt, giving way to a cold dignity, still haunted him. "There isn't anyone else. These are your babies, Damien." Babies. Plural. She'd already known there were multiple heartbeats. When he refused to believe her, when his sister Vanessa had whispered poisonous doubts into his ear, Stephanie had finally gathered her dignity and walked away. His fingers found a small envelope he'd never opened. Inside was a sonogram image dated 1 week after their breakup. 3 distinct shapes, triplets, and a note in Stephanie's handwriting. "They're yours whether you believe it or not. I won't beg again." Damien's throat tightened painfully. What had happened to her? To them? The girls had mentioned their mother going away. Where was Stephanie now? With sudden resolve, he reached for his phone. "Jackson," he said when his head of security answered, "I need you to find someone. 3 little girls, identical triplets, approximately 6 years old. Names are Harper, Madison, and Taylor, and their mother, Stephanie Bennett, my ex-girlfriend." He paused, forcing himself to say the words aloud. "I have reason to believe they're my daughters." After ending the call, Damien stared at the sonogram image, tracing the tiny shapes with his finger. 3 little lives he'd denied. 3 children who had his eyes but were eating charity hot dogs while he dined in Michelin-starred restaurants. Tomorrow, he would find them, and somehow he would make this right. Jackson Morris stood in Damien's office the next morning, tablet in hand. The ex-military security chief's expression remained neutral as he delivered his findings. Stephanie Bennett, age 38. Currently serving a 4-month sentence at Bedford Hills Correctional for stealing asthma medication during a pharmacy break-in. No prior record. Jackson swiped to the next screen. The triplets are in temporary custody of neighbor Mira Patel while Bennett serves her time. They attend PS 118 in Brooklyn. Current living conditions are substandard. Damien stared at Stephanie's mugshot. Her face was thinner, her eyes hollow, but unmistakably the woman he'd once loved. She stole medication? For the middle girl, Madison, apparently has severe asthma. Their insurance was canceled when Bennett couldn't make payments. The implication was clear. While Damien enjoyed unlimited wealth, his children had gone without basic necessities. "I need to see them, properly." 2 hours later, Damien was unrecognizable. Gone were the tailored suits and polished appearance. Dressed in jeans, a worn Henley, and a Brooklyn Nets cap, he parked a modest rental car near PS 118. His heart pounded as the elementary school's doors opened, releasing a flood of children. He spotted them immediately. 3 identical dark-haired girls in mismatched but clean clothes, holding hands as they walked toward an elderly Indian woman waiting nearby. Through his car window, Damien watched intently, cataloging details. Harper, the leader, checking Madison's backpack before they left school grounds. Madison adjusting her glasses as she recounted something to Mrs. Patel. Taylor, skipping alongside them, stopping to pet every dog they passed. He followed at a distance as they made their way to a small neighborhood park. While Mrs. Patel sat on a bench reading a newspaper, the girls played. Their interaction was fascinating. clearly individuals despite identical appearances. Harper, protective and serious. Madison, thoughtful and observant. Taylor, joyful and uninhibited. When Madison began coughing, Harper immediately retrieved an inhaler from her own pocket, helping her sister use it. The scene squeezed something in Damien's chest. These children had learned to care for each other in ways no 6-year-old should need to. Mrs. Patel called the girls over, distributing what appeared to be a meager snack. One apple cut into 3 precise parts. They accepted without complaint, a routine they were clearly accustomed to. Before he could reconsider, Damien found himself approaching an ice cream vendor nearby. Minutes later, he casually walked toward their bench. "Excuse me," he said to Mrs. Patel. "The ice cream man gave me these extras. My nephew couldn't come today. Would your girls like them?" Mrs. Patel looked suspicious, but Taylor's eyes had already lit up at the sight of the colorful popsicles. "Very kind, but we don't take things from strangers," Mrs. Patel replied firmly. "Of course." Damien nodded respectfully. "I'm David Parker. I'm new to the neighborhood. Just moved in over on Maple Street." As he spoke, Madison stared at him with unsettling intensity, her head tilted slightly. "You have eyes like ours," she said suddenly. Damien's heart stopped. "Out of the mouths of babes." "Madison, hush," Mrs. Patel scolded gently. But the connection had been made. As Damien walked away, he knew with absolute certainty he couldn't just observe from a distance anymore. Somehow he needed to become part of their lives. The Harmony Heights Community Center was housed in a weathered brick building with faded murals and a playground with equipment at least 2 decades old. According to Jackson's intel, this was where the triplets spent afternoons while Mrs. Patel worked her part-time job at the local pharmacy. Damien, or David Parker, as he now called himself, approached the front desk with a carefully crafted cover story. "I'm a writer researching a book on urban communities," he explained to the harried receptionist. "I'd like to volunteer while I'm gathering material." Gloria Martinez, the center's director, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, eyed him skeptically. "Writers usually just observe, they don't get their hands dirty." "I believe in immersive research," Damien replied with a humility that would have shocked his executives. After signing forms and a background check that his team had carefully prepared, David was assigned to homework help, precisely where he'd hoped to be placed. That afternoon, he spotted the triplets at a worn table sharing a single pencil between them. Harper was helping Taylor with math while Madison read a science book far beyond her grade level. "Need some help?" he offered, approaching cautiously. Harper's eyes narrowed with recognition. "You're the ice cream man." "Guilty," he admitted. "I'm volunteering here now. I'm David." Madison studied him intently. "Are you really a writer?" "I am. Working on a book about communities like this one." "I want to write books someday," Madison said, "about science and space." For the next hour, Damien helped them with homework, marveling at how different they were despite identical appearances. Madison worked through problems methodically. Taylor approached everything with creative chaos. Harper watched him like a hawk, protective and suspicious. Later, as children thinned out, Gloria appeared beside him. "They're special girls. They seem very close," Damien observed carefully. "They've had to be. Their mother was one of our success stories until recently." Gloria sighed. "Stephanie worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. When she lost her health, insurance, Madison's asthma medication became unaffordable, nearly $600 a month. So she stole it," Damien said quietly. "Desperate people make desperate choices. 4 months for a first offense seems excessive, but that judge has always been harsh. When will she be released?" "Next month, hopefully. Meanwhile, they're barely hanging on. Mrs. Patel does her best, but she's elderly and on a fixed income herself." Gloria gave him a curious look. "You seem particularly interested in their situation." "I have a niece their age," he lied smoothly. "Makes me think how easily circumstances can change for any child." As the center prepared to close, Taylor accidentally knocked over a cup of paint water, splashing Damien's sleeve. "I'm sorry," she gasped, eyes filling with tears. "It's just water," he assured her, rolling up his sleeve to clean it in the bathroom. He didn't notice Harper watching until she spoke from the doorway. "That's a really expensive watch for a writer." Damien froze, silently cursing himself for forgetting to remove his Patek Philippe, a $30,000 timepiece completely inconsistent with his cover story. "It was my father's," he improvised. "The only valuable thing I own." Harper's eyes, so like his own, revealed her skepticism. "My mom says you can tell a lot about people from the details they forget to hide." As she walked away, Damien realized his disguise might be more transparent than he'd thought. These weren't just any children. They were his daughters, with his intelligence and Stephanie's perceptiveness. This charade wouldn't last long. 2 weeks into his volunteer work, David Parker had become a fixture at Harmony Heights. Children gravitated toward him, but none more significantly than the triplets. What began as a mission to confirm their identity had evolved into something more complex, genuine connection. Today, Gloria had organized an art therapy session. "Draw someone important to you," she instructed the group. Damien circulated among the tables offering encouragement, but his attention remained fixed on his daughters. Harper drew with precision, a perfect rendition of Stephanie holding all 3 girls' hands. Madison created a detailed solar system, but added a small portrait of her mother in the corner. Taylor's paper exploded with color, her sisters, her mother, Mrs. Patel, and surprisingly, a smiling figure labeled Mr. David. "You put me in your picture?" Damien asked, throat tight with unexpected emotion. "You help us with homework and never get mad when I ask lots of questions," Taylor explained simply. Later, during music time, Damien discovered Harper hiding in a corner with a violin borrowed from the center's limited collection. Her fingers moved with natural talent across the strings. "That's beautiful," he said softly. She startled, nearly dropping the instrument. "I'm not supposed to touch it without permission." "You play wonderfully. Have you had lessons?" Harper shook her head. "I watch videos online when we can borrow Mrs. Patel's tablet. Mom promised lessons someday when we could afford it." Each day revealed new dimensions. Madison's extraordinary mathematical abilities, Taylor's natural grace and love of dance, Harper's protective instincts and hidden artistic talents. They were remarkable children, his children, raised with love despite crushing circumstances. On Thursday afternoon, disaster struck. Madison began wheezing severely during reading time, her inhaler failing to provide relief. "It's empty," Harper said, panic rising in her voice. "The refill is at home." Without hesitation, Damien took charge. "Sit her upright. Taylor, get Gloria. Harper, is there a backup inhaler anywhere?" He loosened Madison's collar, spoke calmly to her about breathing techniques, and positioned her precisely the way the asthma specialist had once instructed him for his nephew, a lie he'd created but now needed to maintain. Mrs. Patel arrived with an emergency inhaler just as Madison's breathing began to normalize. "You knew exactly what to do," Mrs. Patel observed later as Madison rested. "Most people panic." "My nephew has severe asthma," Damien repeated his cover story. "I've handled many attacks." Mrs. Patel studied him with penetrating wisdom. "Strange how life works. Those girls have no father, yet here you appear with the same rare eye color, same mannerisms even." Damien froze. "What do you know about their father?" "Only what Stephanie mentioned, that he didn't believe they were his." "Medical impossibility," she said. Mrs. Patel's gaze intensified. "But genetics has a way of revealing truth, doesn't it, Mr. Parker? Or whatever your real name is." Before Damien could respond, Taylor bounded over. "Madison's better now. She says thank you for helping." "Of course," he managed, heart racing. As Taylor led him back to her sister, Mrs. Patel called after him, "Sometimes what we think is impossible is merely improbable, and miracles happen every day. Those girls are living proof." Damien felt simultaneously exposed and relieved. His secret wasn't fully revealed, but the first thread had been pulled. The question wasn't if his disguise would unravel, but when, and how the truth would affect 3 innocent lives who had already endured too much uncertainty. Damien's penthouse, once a showcase of minimalist luxury, had undergone a subtle transformation. Children's books about space for Madison, a beginner's violin book for Harper, and ballet slippers for Taylor's upcoming community center dance class were carefully arranged on his coffee table, gifts he planned to donate anonymously. Caroline, his executive assistant of 15 years, watched with bewilderment as Damien rescheduled a critical investor meeting. "But sir, the Tokyo partners specifically requested your presence." "Handle it, Caroline. I have a prior commitment that can't be moved." The commitment, the triplets' elementary school science fair where Madison was presenting. "Mr. Reynolds, that's the 3rd rescheduling this month. The board is concerned." Damien barely registered her words as he studied Madison's asthma medication costs online. $600 monthly for a child's breathing. Meanwhile, he spent more on a single bottle of wine. "Sir? Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," he replied, closing his laptop. "Just a perspective adjustment." At Harmony Heights that afternoon, Damien helped set up the science fair. Madison had created a project on lunar phases that outshone the work of children twice her age. "Mr. David," she whispered excitedly, "I used real NASA data." Her intelligence both impressed and pained him. What opportunities might she have had, with proper resources? What might all 3 girls have accomplished? During the presentations, Damien noticed Harper watching him intensely whenever he reacted to Madison's achievements. Her perceptiveness was unnerving. Later, Jackson called with updates on Stephanie's case. Her public defender was fresh out of law school, overwhelmed with cases. The prosecution pushed hard for maximum sentencing despite her clean record. Something doesn't add up. That evening, Damien drove the girls home during a sudden downpour. The triplets huddled in the back seat of his modest rental, pointing out landmarks in their neighborhood. "That's where Mom's flower shop was before it closed," Taylor said sadly. "She made the prettiest arrangements," Madison added. "People came from all over Brooklyn." "But then the pandemic hit," Harper continued, "and everything changed. The building they stopped at was dilapidated with peeling paint and security bars on windows. The contrast between this place and his luxury penthouse struck Damien physically. "Would you like to come up?" Taylor asked innocently. "We have cookies Mrs. Patel made." Before Damien could respond, Harper interrupted. "I'm sure Mr. David is busy, Taylor." "Actually, I'd love to," he heard himself say. Their apartment was small but meticulously clean. Every surface displayed evidence of Stephanie's efforts to create stability despite poverty. Handmade curtains, walls covered with the girls' artwork, educational posters, and photographs documenting every milestone. While Mrs. Patel prepared tea, Damien noticed a partially hidden photograph on a small bookshelf. His breath caught. It showed a younger Stephanie and himself at a university picnic, his arm around her shoulders. His face was mostly torn away, but there was no mistaking the couple. When he turned, Harper stood watching him, his eyes, narrowed thoughtfully. "Why are you really here, Mr. Parker?" she asked directly. "You're not just a writer, are you?" Before he could formulate a response, Taylor called excitedly from the kitchen. "Mrs. Patel says you can stay for dinner. We're having spaghetti." Harper maintained her gaze, challenging, analytical. "You look at us like you're trying to memorize our faces, like you're afraid we'll disappear." Damien knelt to her level, heart pounding. "Harper, and sometimes," she continued relentlessly, "you look sad when you think we're not watching." "That's because," he began carefully, "sometimes life gives us second chances we don't deserve." Vanessa Reynolds descended from her private jet at Teterboro Airport, irritated by her brother's silence during her 2-week Paris business trip. 3 unanswered calls and cryptic messages from Caroline about Damien's unusual behavior had prompted her early return. "Welcome back, Ms. Reynolds," her driver greeted. "Straight to the office?" "No, James. Take me to Damien's penthouse." During the ride, Vanessa scrolled through security reports from Reynolds Enterprises. Damien had missed 4 board meetings, canceled investor dinners, and most alarmingly, requested detailed reviews of company medical benefits for dependents. Something was very wrong. Across town, Damien sat in his office reviewing a disturbing report from Jackson. The doctor who had diagnosed his sterility 15 years ago had retired suddenly, his medical records mysteriously incomplete. And the judge who sentenced Stephanie? A significant donor to a foundation where Vanessa served as chairwoman. Coincidences that no longer felt coincidental. His phone buzzed. Jackson again. Sir, preliminary DNA results are available. Damien's heart raced. Though unnecessary given the girl's unmistakable resemblance, he'd secretly arranged testing using discarded straws from their juice boxes, an ethical line he'd crossed out of legal necessity. And 9.99997% probability of paternity for all, 3 girls. Though expected, the confirmation hit Damien physically. He was their father. He had abandoned his children and their mother to poverty and struggle while he accumulated wealth. Worse, he was beginning to suspect the original diagnosis that destroyed his relationship with Stephanie hadn't been a simple medical error. At the community center that afternoon, Damien helped Madison with a complex math problem while Harper practiced violin in the corner and Taylor colored nearby. This routine had become precious to him, a glimpse of fatherhood he'd never thought possible. You explain things better than our teachers, Madison observed. Did you study math in college? Finance, he answered truthfully, but math was always my best subject. Mine too. Mom says I get my brain from... Madison stopped suddenly, looking uncomfortable. From your dad? Damien suggested gently. Madison nodded. Mom doesn't talk about him much, just that he didn't believe we were his because doctors told him he couldn't have kids. The directness of children. No accusation could have wounded more effectively. The center's door opened, and Damien's blood froze. Vanessa stood in the entrance, designer coat and perfectly coiffed hair, wildly out of place in the humble surroundings. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, locking onto him with predatory focus. Mr. David, Taylor called cheerfully. I finished my drawing. Vanessa approached slowly, her stiletto heels clicking ominously against the linoleum floor. Her smile was winter cold. David? How quaint. She turned to Taylor. Hello, darling. What a beautiful drawing. Taylor beamed. Thank you. Mr. David is helping us while our mom is away. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly as she properly studied the triplets for the first time. The Reynolds blue eyes, the distinctive features. Her composure slipped momentarily. I see, she said tightly. Well, Mr. David and I need to have a little chat. Vanessa, Damien began warningly. Damien, she replied deliberately, using his real name. What an unexpected place to find you. The triplets fell silent. Madison connected the dots first. Damien? Like Damien Reynolds? The man on the Reynolds building downtown? Vanessa's smile turned triumphant. The very same, dear. It seems my brother has been playing pretend. 3 pairs of identical blue eyes turned to him, filled with confusion and the dawning of betrayal. Bedford Hills Correctional Facility loomed gray and imposing against the morning sky. Damien, dressed conservatively in slacks and a button-down shirt, followed a guard through security checkpoints toward the visitation area. His hands trembled slightly. Facing business rivals had never unnerved him like the prospect of facing Stephanie after 6 years. The visitation room was stark and institutional. Inmates in beige uniforms sat across from visitors at small tables under fluorescent lights and watchful guards. Damien took his assigned seat and waited. When Stephanie entered, the impact was physical. Thinner, her chestnut hair pulled back, severely prison clothes hanging on her frame, yet unmistakably the woman he'd once loved. Her green eyes widened in shock before hardening with years of accumulated pain. She sat across from him, posture rigid. 6 years of silence. And now, you appear, why? I saw them, Damien said simply. The girls, selling hot dogs. And now you believe they're yours? Her voice was controlled, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her hands together. How convenient for your conscience. I never received your letters, Stephanie. Any of them. I sent dozens, for years. Skepticism flashed across her face. All returned or ignored. Vanessa, Damien said, the single name and explanation that seemed to resonate. I suspected as much. Stephanie's shoulders sagged slightly. Your sister made her feelings about me quite clear from the beginning. I have the DNA results, Damien continued, though I didn't need them. They have my eyes, my expressions, and my heart, thankfully, Stephanie added sharply. What do you want, Damien? The question hung between them. What did he want? Forgiveness seemed too much to ask, understanding too little. To help, he finally said. To try to make amends if possible. Stephanie studied him, years of hardship having taught her to be wary of sudden generosity. They're remarkable children, he added softly. A flicker of pride broke through her reserve. Yes, they are. Tell me what happened, Stephanie. After. She looked away, collecting herself. What happened? Reality happened. 3 premature babies in NICU. Medical bills, no family support. I sold everything, worked multiple jobs. Her voice cracked slightly. We were managing until the pandemic. Then everything collapsed. My shop, our health insurance. When Madison couldn't breathe and I couldn't afford her medication. She left the sentence unfinished. Why didn't you contact me directly? Come to my office? I tried. Repeatedly. Your security turned me away. Phone calls blocked. Eventually I accepted that you truly wanted nothing to do with us. Damien's throat tightened painfully. I didn't know. I swear it. All these years. Do they know who you are? Stephanie asked suddenly. Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first. A faint surprise crossed her features. The Damien she remembered wouldn't have shown such consideration. And now? What do you propose? You can't simply appear in their lives and disappear again when your guilt is assuaged. I want to be their father, Stephanie. Not from a distance, not through financial support alone. She studied him with penetrating intensity. And if I refuse? If I decide your sudden paternal interest comes too late? The question terrified him, but Damien answered honestly. Then I would respect your decision, continue providing anonymous support, and hope someday you might reconsider. Silence stretched between them, filled with 6 years of missed bedtime. Stories, first days of school, childhood illnesses, and daily struggles. They ask about you, Stephanie finally said. Their father. I never told them you rejected them, only that you didn't believe they could be yours. Tears filled Damien's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. Thank you for that mercy. A guard announced, 5 minutes remaining. Stephanie straightened, decision apparently made. If you're sincere about being in their lives permanently, not just easing your conscience, then yes, you can tell them. But Damien, her voice hardened. If you hurt them, if you make promises you don't keep, there will be no third chances. Elena Vasquez's corner office commanded a view of Central Park, the prestigious location reflecting her status as one of New York's most formidable attorneys. Damien watched as she reviewed Stephanie's case file, her expression growing increasingly troubled. This sentencing is extraordinarily harsh for a first-time non-violent offender, Elena said, removing her glasses. 4 months for stealing medication valued under $400, with 3 dependent children? Most judges would have granted probation. Can you get her released early? The irregularities give us grounds to petition. However, Elena's eyes narrowed. Someone went to considerable effort to ensure she received maximum punishment. Damien's suspicions crystallized. My sister. While Elena's team began legal proceedings, Damien focused on securing the girl's immediate future. In his temporary office, established far from Reynolds Enterprises to avoid Vanessa's surveillance, he finalized paperwork with Harmony Heights' landlord. The Reynolds Family Foundation is pleased to purchase the building, Damien told Gloria Martinez the next day. The center will have guaranteed occupancy, rent-free, with a substantial renovation budget. Gloria, typically unflappable, wiped away tears. This changes everything for hundreds of children, including your daughters. I'd prefer to remain anonymous for now. Of course. But Damien, Gloria added gently, after Vanessa's visit, the girls have questions, Harper especially. Children need honesty. That afternoon, Damien met with Dr. Catherine Wilson, a child psychologist specializing in family reunification. The triplets have established a stable identity without you, Dr. Wilson explained. Suddenly introducing yourself as their father, especially given your wealth and status, will create significant disruption. We need to proceed carefully. Jackson's investigation, meanwhile, yielded disturbing revelations. Vanessa had maintained a sophisticated monitoring system around Stephanie for years, intercepting mail, blocking phone calls, even paying building staff to report contact attempts. Most damning was evidence that Dr. Lawrence, who had diagnosed Damien's infertility, received a $50,000 consulting fee from Vanessa's personal account 1 week after delivering his conclusive report. She wanted me alone and dependent, Damien realized. A family would have threatened her control over the Reynolds fortune. His phone buzzed with a text from Jackson. Urgent meeting with Child Services tomorrow, discussing concerns about triplets' living situation. A cold fury settled in Damien's chest. Even now, Vanessa was maneuvering to separate him from his children. That evening, he sat with the triplets in a quiet corner of the community center. After Vanessa's revelation, he'd expected rejection, but children's resilience constantly surprised him. Madison was cautiously curious, Taylor, openly, excited about his important job, while Harper maintained suspicious distance. I haven't been completely honest about who I am, he began carefully. You're rich, Harper stated flatly. We looked you up at the library. Yes, I am, but that's not the important part of who I am. What is? Madison asked. Damien took a deep breath. I knew your mother a long time ago. We were very close. Before we were born? Taylor asked. Yes. And there's something important I need to tell you, something I've only recently discovered myself. He met each pair of blue eyes, his eyes, steadily. But first, I'd like to arrange for you to visit your mom. Would you like that? Excitement was answer enough. As the girls chattered about what they'd tell Stephanie, Damien's resolve hardened. He would fight for his newfound family, against Vanessa, against the legal system, against his own past failures. The battle lines were drawn, and this time he would not retreat. The small conference room at Harmony Heights had been transformed. Gloria placed comfortable pillows on chairs, art supplies on the table, and soft music played in the background. All attempts to create a gentle environment for difficult truths. Damien arrived early, placing old photographs on the table with trembling hands. Each image captured moments with Stephanie from their college days, boating on the lake, studying in the library, laughing at graduation. A documented history of love that predated the triplets' existence. Are you ready? Gloria asked gently. No, Damien admitted. But they deserve the truth. The girls entered cautiously. Harper's posture was defensive, Madison's curious, and Taylor's openly eager. They sat together on one side, a united front of identical faces with remarkably different expressions. Thank you for meeting with me, Damien began. What I'm about to tell you is important and may be confusing. Madison adjusted her glasses. Is it about why you pretended to be someone else? Partly, yes. Damien took a deep breath. I knew your mother years ago. We met in college and fell in love. He slid the photographs toward them. Taylor gasped. That's Mom. She looks so happy. We were happy, Damien confirmed, until something happened that separated us. What? Harper demanded, arms crossed protectively. Doctors told me I couldn't have children. It's called infertility. So when your mother told me she was pregnant, I didn't believe her. Madison's analytical mind connected the dots first. But that means, yes, Damien said quietly. I'm your biological father. The room fell silent. 3 identical faces processed this revelation with vastly different emotions. That's why we have the same eyes, Madison observed clinically. Is that why you were watching us, spying? Harper's voice trembled with suppressed anger. Where were you all this time? Taylor asked, her voice small. Damien answered honestly. I didn't know you existed. Not until I saw you that day by the hot dog cart. Your mother tried to tell me, sent letters, but I never received them. Convenient excuse, Harper muttered. It's the truth, Damien insisted gently. Someone intercepted her communications. Your sister, Madison deduced. The scary lady in the expensive clothes. Damien nodded. I'm still uncovering everything she did, but yes. Taylor, ever emotional, asked the question burning in her heart. Do you want to be our dad now? The directness nearly undid him. Yes. More than anything. Why should we believe you? Harper challenged, protective of her sister's hearts. Mom, cried at night. We lived in one room when the apartment flooded. Madison almost died during an asthma attack. Where were you? Her accusations struck like physical blows. I can never make up for not being there, Damien acknowledged. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying if you'll let me. Gloria intervened gently. Girls, sometimes adults make terrible mistakes. What matters is what happens next. Across town, Vanessa sat in her office reviewing a report from her private investigator. Her lips thinned seeing photos of Damien with the triplets at Harmony Heights. Find everything on Stephanie Bennett, she instructed her lawyer. Parenting lapses, financial issues, anything we can use to question her fitness. And expedite that. Meeting with Child Services. Back at the center, Damien showed the girls their mother's earliest letters that Jackson had recovered, including the sonogram image of 3 tiny forms. Mom kept a copy of this exact picture, Madison whispered. As the session concluded, reactions remained mixed. Harper suspicious, Madison calculating possibilities, Taylor cautiously hopeful. Can we think about it? Harper asked. Of course, Damien replied. I'm not going anywhere, not ever again. The judge denied Ms. Bennett's request for early release, Elena reported, her voice tight with professional frustration. Despite our compelling evidence about the excessive sentencing, someone apparently made a call. Damien's office at his temporary headquarters was sparse compared to his luxurious Reynolds Enterprises suite, but it served its purpose, operating beyond Vanessa's immediate reach. Vanessa, he stated, not a question but a certainty. Elena nodded grimly. My source, in the clerk's office, confirmed a donation to the judge's re-election campaign was made 3 days ago, substantial enough to warrant special consideration. Jackson entered, setting a thick folder on the desk. Everything you requested, sir, financial transactions, phone records, and email communications for the past 6 years. The evidence was damning beyond Damien's worst suspicions. Vanessa had systematically intercepted every letter Stephanie sent, establishing mail redirects at multiple Reynolds properties. She'd pressured Dr. Lawrence to misrepresent Damien's fertility results, using veiled threats against his practice. Most disturbing were recent communications with Judge Harlow, substantial donations followed by personal concerns about Stephanie's case. But the final discovery left Damien physically ill. Vanessa was actively fabricating evidence suggesting Stephanie planned to publicly claim paternity and demand Reynolds' money upon release, a scheme designed to extend her prison sentence. She scheduled a meeting with Child Protective Services tomorrow, Jackson added, suggesting the triplets would benefit from structured care rather than shelter living. Damien stared at the document in stunned silence. Vanessa wasn't just protecting past secrets. She was actively working to ensure his daughters remained separated from both parents. Enough, he said quietly, a deadly calm settling over him. It's time. 2 hours later, Damien walked into Vanessa's corner office, at Reynolds Enterprises unannounced. His sister looked up from her desk, momentarily startled before composing herself into a practiced smile. Damien, darling, finally emerging from whatever midlife crisis sent you slumming in Brooklyn? She gestured to the Nakamura Group portfolio on her desk. Perfect timing. I've nearly finalized the acquisition you abandoned. Damien set the evidence folder between them. 6 years, Vanessa. 6 years you've been lying to me. Her smile faltered slightly. What are you talking about? Stephanie's intercepted letters. My falsified medical records, your communications with Judge Harlow. He tapped the folder. It's all here. Vanessa's composure cracked momentarily before her features hardened into cold calculation. Everything I did was to protect you, to protect our family legacy. By separating me from my children, by imprisoning their mother. Those girls were never supposed to exist, Vanessa snapped, mask finally slipping. She trapped you with that pregnancy. That waitress from nowhere was beneath you, threatening everything our parents built. They're my daughters, Vanessa. My blood. The Reynolds legacy is more important than your sentimentality, she countered coldly. I've dedicated my life to preserving what you seem eager to dilute. You falsified medical records to make me believe I couldn't father children. A necessary intervention. You were becoming entirely too attached to that girl. You intercepted letters telling me about my own children's birth. Letters claiming miracle triplets? Vanessa scoffed. Please, the statistical improbability alone should have confirmed her infidelity. And when I accidentally discovered them anyway, you tried to extend Stephanie's imprisonment and take my daughters away. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Those children will want for nothing in proper foster care. Better than growing up with a convicted criminal mother and an absent father. Damien's voice remained dangerously quiet. I've already removed you as signatory from all Reynolds accounts. Your access to company resources ends today. The color drained from Vanessa's face. You can't do that. I've called an emergency board meeting. Jackson is distributing the evidence of your manipulation to all members as we speak. Damien stood. The Reynolds family does stand for something, Vanessa, but it's not what you think. It's integrity, something you sacrificed long ago. You'll regret choosing them over me, Vanessa hissed, desperation entering her voice. Those little brats and their gold-digging mother will bleed you dry. No, Damien replied with absolute certainty. This is the first choice in 6 years. I won't regret. As security arrived to escort Vanessa from the building, she called after him. The board won't stand for this. The family name continues. Damien interrupted. Through Harper, Madison, and Taylor Reynolds, my daughters. Watching his sister, his only family for decades, being escorted away, Damien felt no triumph, only resolution. The path forward was clear. Repair what had been broken, rebuild what had been denied, and redefine what the Reynolds legacy would truly represent for generations to come. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Judge Rivera's chambers as Elena presented the evidence of judicial misconduct in Stephanie's case. These communications between Ms. Reynolds and Judge Harlow constitute a clear conflict of interest, Elena argued, her voice controlled but forceful. My client's sentencing was prejudiced by external influence. Judge Rivera studied the documents, her expression grave. This is deeply concerning, Ms. Vasquez. I'm granting your motion for immediate release pending review. 3 hours later, Damien stood in the shadows of the prison parking lot, watching as Stephanie emerged through the gates. Despite the prison-issued clothing and visible exhaustion, she carried herself with a dignity that tightened his chest with admiration and regret. Gloria had brought the triplets, who erupted from the car and raced toward their mother. Stephanie fell to her knees, gathering all three into her arms, tears streaming freely down her face. Damien remained distant, understanding this moment belonged to them alone. Later that evening, after the girls had finally fallen asleep in the temporary apartment Damien had secured, Stephanie found him on the small balcony. You did this, she said, not a question but an acknowledgement. Elena did. She's the best attorney in New York. Whom you hired. Stephanie leaned against the railing, studying the neighborhood she'd raised her daughters in. Why the apartment? Why not just throw money at us and return to your penthouse? The bitterness was justified. Damien chose his words carefully. The deed is in your name, no strings attached. It's not charity, Stephanie. It's the barest beginning of what I owe you all. And what happens now? You sweep in with your billions and suddenly play daddy? After 6 years of their lives have passed without you? I follow your lead, Damien said simply. Whatever boundaries you set, whatever pace you decide is best for them. I've missed 6 years. I don't expect to make that up overnight. Stephanie's defenses wavered slightly. They're confused. Harper's angry. Madison has 1,000 questions. And Taylor, she smiled faintly. Taylor's already planning adventures with her new father. They're remarkable. You did that, Stephanie. You raised 3 extraordinary girls with no help, no support. I can never make that right. No, you can't. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you know what it was like? Holding 3 newborns alone? Working 3 jobs while recovering from a C-section? Choosing which bill to pay each month? Which child got new shoes? Watching Madison struggle to breathe and not being able to afford proper care? Each question hit Damien like a physical blow. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends, he said quietly. Why should I believe you now? Damien met her gaze directly. Because I'm not the same man who rejected you 6 years ago. Because seeing our daughters changed everything. Because I finally understand what matters. In the small kitchen, a glass shattered. They rushed inside to find Madison having an asthma attack, reaching for her inhaler with trembling hands. Instantly, they moved in perfect synchronization. Stephanie guiding Madison to sit upright while Damien retrieved the backup inhaler, both murmuring reassurances. Within minutes, the crisis passed. As Madison drifted back to sleep between them, Stephanie looked at Damien with the first hint of something beyond anger. We were good together once, she said softly. We could be good at this. For them. He replied. Not forgiveness. That would take much longer. But perhaps the beginning of a different kind of partnership built on the 3 small miracles they'd created despite everything. The brownstone in Park Slope represented a careful compromise, comfortable but not ostentatious in a good school district yet not far from the triplets' familiar neighborhood. Stephanie stood in the empty living room, running her fingers along the freshly painted walls. The movers can bring your things from storage tomorrow, Damien said from the doorway, maintaining a respectful distance. Or we can start fresh if you prefer. Some of both, Stephanie replied. The girls should have their familiar things, but... She gestured to the spacious room. Clearly we need more than what fit in our old apartment. 6 weeks after her release, the delicate dance of establishing new boundaries continued. Stephanie had accepted the house, placed in her name as promised, but maintained strict independence otherwise, refusing Damien's offers of additional financial support beyond the girls' education and health care. Upstairs, excited voices echoed as the triplets explored their individual bedrooms, a first after sharing one small room their entire lives. Mom, there's a window seat in my room, Taylor called down. Mine has built-in bookshelves. Madison's voice overlapped. Harper remained quieter, still processing the dramatic changes with cautious skepticism. Later that evening, as Stephanie prepared a simple dinner in the new kitchen, Damien sat at the dining table helping Madison with homework, while Taylor colored nearby. Harper watched from the doorway, her reluctance to fully engage still evident. When do I have to go back to your other house? Damien asked gently. Harper shrugged. Whenever. It's not like we need you here. The hurt was visible in his eyes, but he nodded, understanding. I'll stay as long as you all want me to. No pressure. From the kitchen, Stephanie observed the interaction, her feelings complicated. Damien's patience with Harper's anger, his consistent presence despite rejection, contradicted the self-centered man she remembered. The next morning's newspaper shattered their fragile peace. The headline screamed, Reynolds family scandal, heir. Reunites with secret triplets. Below was a grainy photo of Damien with the girls at the park, alongside a smaller picture of Stephanie leaving the brownstone. The article quoted sources close to the family, suggesting Stephanie had deliberately hidden the children to extract a financial settlement. Vanessa, Damien growled, scanning the article. Stephanie paled as her phone began ringing. Reporters, undoubtedly. The girls' school called next. Photographers had gathered at the entrance. By afternoon, the siege was in full effect. Paparazzi camped outside the brownstone, calling questions through the windows, frightening the girls. Madison's anxiety triggered an asthma flare while Taylor burst into tears at the commotion. Even Harper appeared shaken. "I'm so sorry," Damien said helplessly. "This is my fault." "No," Stephanie corrected. "It's Vanessa's." When Madison's breathing worsened, Damien took command. "We need to get her to a doctor. Jackson can bring a car to the back entrance." Within 30 minutes, they had executed an escape worthy of a tactical operation. Jackson's security team created a diversion at the front while Damien led the family through neighboring backyards to where a discreet SUV waited in the alley. At the pediatric urgent care, they huddled in a private room, Madison, breathing easier with treatment. The crisis had temporarily suspended their careful boundaries. Stephanie leaning against Damien's shoulder from exhaustion, his arm protectively around all three girls. "Will those people always follow us now?" Taylor asked in a small voice. "No, sweetheart," Damien promised. "I'll fix this." The next morning, while the family remained secluded in the brownstone, Damien walked deliberately into the plaza outside Reynolds Enterprises headquarters, where the largest crowd of reporters had gathered. "Mr. Reynolds, is it true you rejected your children at birth? Did their mother hide them from you? Are you fighting for custody?" Damien raised his hands for silence. "I have a brief statement. 6 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I rejected the woman I loved and our unborn children based on false medical information. Stephanie Bennett never hid our daughters from me. I failed them, not the reverse. She raised 3 extraordinary girls with no help while I remained ignorant of their existence due to deliberate interference." The reporters fell silent, sensing a bigger story. The Reynolds family has always valued legacy above all else. Today I'm redefining that legacy through Harper, Madison, and Taylor, my daughters who I'm proud to acknowledge publicly. Their mother has demonstrated more integrity, courage, and love than anyone I've ever known. We're not a traditional family, but we're finding our way forward together. That's all I'll say on this private matter. As cameras flashed, one reporter called out, "Will you respond to your sister's interview claiming Ms. Bennett manipulated this situation?" Damien's expression hardened. "My sister's actions, including falsifying medical records and interfering with legal proceedings, are under investigation by the authorities. The board has removed her from all positions within Reynolds Enterprises. That's all I'll comment on that matter." Back at the brownstone, Stephanie watched the press conference on television, tears threatening. The man on screen, publicly taking responsibility, protecting their daughters, honoring her sacrifices, was not the Damien who had coldly dismissed her 6 years ago. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Stephanie found Damien on the back porch. "Thank you," she said simply, "for what you said today. I only told the truth." Finally, a comfortable silence settled between them as they watched fireflies dance in the small garden. "We still have a long way to go," Stephanie said eventually. Damien nodded. "I know, but for the first time in 6 years, I'm on the right path." In her bedroom upstairs, Harper sat at her window, watching her parents below. Her anger remained, but alongside it grew something new, a cautious, fragile hope. 6 months had transformed all their lives in ways none could have anticipated. Autumn leaves swirled around the park slope brownstone as Stephanie added final touches to flower arrangements in her newly established home studio. Reynolds Florals, named with deliberate irony, had quickly gained a following among Brooklyn's elite, though Stephanie had firmly declined Damien's offers of business investment. "Your 3 o'clock consultation canceled," her assistant called from the doorway. "But Mrs. Abramowitz wants to double her standing order for Shabbat arrangements." Stephanie nodded, making a note. Independence tasted sweeter than she remembered. She had accepted Damien's support for the girls' education and health care, but insisted on building her business through her own talents. Across town, Damien sat in an unfamiliar environment, the parent-teacher conference room at Westridge Academy where the triplets now attended school. Their transition from public education had been carefully managed, with the girls remaining together but receiving individualized attention for their distinct talents. Madison's mathematical abilities are genuinely exceptional, Ms. Winters explained. We're recommending the advanced STEM track with university-level mentoring. And Harper? Damien asked, noting the violin certificate partially hidden in the folder. The teacher smiled. She won first chair in orchestra, despite being the youngest member. Her technical skill is remarkable, but more importantly, she plays with genuine emotion. That can't be taught. Taylor continues to flourish in performance arts, she continued. Her dance instructor believes she has professional potential if she desires to pursue it. Pride swelled in Damien's chest, not for achievements that reflected on him, but for the extraordinary resilience and talent the girls had developed despite years of limitation. They're adjusting well socially, Ms. Winters added, though Harper occasionally struggles with questions about your unusual family situation. Damien nodded, understanding. Of his 3 daughters, Harper remained the most guarded, though small breakthroughs occurred with increasing frequency. Just last week she'd asked him to attend her violin recital, the first direct invitation she'd extended. Later that evening, the new family rhythm played out in their evolving routine. Damien arrived for their Tuesday dinner with bags of groceries, having learned to cook basic meals under Taylor's enthusiastic instruction. He maintained his separate residence nearby, close enough for involvement, distant enough to respect boundaries. Dad, we dissected a frog today, Madison announced, as he entered, her former reticence about calling him Dad gradually fading. Gross, Taylor countered, dancing around the kitchen in perpetual motion. Harper looked up briefly from her math homework. You're 7 minutes late, she noted. Criticism, but also evidence she'd been waiting for him. These dinner gatherings had become their cornerstone, a time when pretenses fell away and they practiced being a family. Damien chopped vegetables while Stephanie prepared chicken, their movements around the kitchen a careful choreography of 2 people relearning each other's rhythms. The fragile peace shattered at 2:17 a.m. when Madison's coughing jolted everyone awake. Stephanie reached her first, finding the inhaler empty. Her spare kit's downstairs, she called urgently. Damien was already moving, returning seconds later with the emergency medication as Madison's lips took on a faint bluish tinge. Harper and Taylor huddled in the doorway, fear evident in their identical faces. Not working, Madison wheezed after the first treatment. Without discussion, Damien scooped her into his arms while Stephanie grabbed her purse. Girls' coats now, she instructed Harper and Taylor. We're going to the hospital. What followed was a night that tested their newly formed bonds. In the emergency room, they functioned as a seamless unit, Stephanie providing medical history, Damien handling insurance details, Harper keeping careful watch over Taylor while maintaining phone contact with Mrs. Patel, who arrived an hour later to take the younger girls home. Dawn found Stephanie and Damien side by side in uncomfortable hospital chairs, Madison finally sleeping peacefully after treatment for a severe asthma attack. You knew exactly what to do, Stephanie murmured, exhaustion evident in her voice. I've studied everything about pediatric asthma since finding out about Madison, Damien admitted. Read every article, consulted specialists. Stephanie studied his profile, the worry lines, the disheveled hair, the complete absence of the corporate titan everyone else saw. You've changed, she observed. They changed me, he replied simply. You all did. A nurse entered with discharge papers, smiling at the obvious care between them. Your daughter's going to be fine, beautiful family you have. Neither corrected her assumption. Back home, after settling Madison with strict instructions to rest, they collapsed on the living room sofa, the adrenaline of crisis finally fading. We make a good team, Stephanie admitted reluctantly. The night's events having crumbled another layer of her defensive walls. We always did, Damien replied softly. I just forgot what mattered. The silence between them held no tension now, just shared exhaustion and the quiet acknowledgement of how far they'd come. Without conscious thought, Stephanie's head rested against his shoulder, Damien's arm gently encircling her. From the hallway, Harper watched unseen, her complicated feelings toward her father evolving yet again. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where they might truly be a family, whole and healed, despite the broken beginnings that had shaped them all. Spring sunshine bathed Central Park in golden light as colorful balloons danced in the gentle breeze. A banner stretched between two trees proclaimed, "Happy 8th birthday Harper, Madison, and Taylor," in bright letters, each name written in the girls' favorite colors. 2 years had passed since Damien Reynolds first spotted 3 hungry little girls at a hot dog cart. Today he stood beside the elaborate dessert table, watching with quiet wonder as his daughters greeted arriving guests. Madison, glasses perched on her nose, was demonstrating a small robot she'd programmed herself to a cluster of fascinated classmates. Taylor twirled in her new purple dress, hugging everyone who arrived with unrestrained joy. Harper, more reserved but no longer distant, carefully arranged her violin case under the gift table before joining her sisters. "Quite a difference from their 6th birthday celebration," Stephanie said, appearing at Damien's side. "That was cupcakes in the shelter's common room." "You made those celebrations magical even then," Damien replied. "Mrs. Patel showed me the photos." Stephanie's flower business had bloomed into a successful boutique operation with corporate accounts throughout Manhattan. She maintained her independence while accepting that interdependence wasn't surrender, a balance that had taken months to perfect. Gloria Martinez arrived with several children from Harmony Heights, now operating in 3 Brooklyn locations, thanks to the Reynolds Foundation. Mrs. Patel followed, carrying her famous homemade samosas that the girls still requested weekly. "Mr. Reynolds," Jackson approached discreetly. "The special delivery is ready." Damien nodded thanks. The final surprise required precise timing. As afternoon progressed, the gathering reflected their reconstructed lives, neither the desperate struggle of Stephanie's years alone, nor the cold privilege of Damien's former existence, but something new and balanced they'd built together. Harper's violin performance hushed the crowd, her talent now nurtured by Manhattan's finest teachers. Madison presented the science project that had won national recognition. Taylor danced with uninhibited joy alongside classmates from her ballet academy. When cake time arrived, Stephanie gathered everyone around 3 identical confections, each reflecting the girls' distinct personalities. Harper's elegant with musical notes, Madison's featuring mathematical symbols, Taylor's exuberantly decorated with dancing figures. "Before we sing," Damien said, stepping forward, "I have something for the birthday girls." He presented 3 small velvet boxes. Inside each lay a delicate locket in the shape of a heart. "These belong to your grandmother Reynolds," Damien explained. "She would have been so proud of you." The girls opened their lockets to find tiny family photos inside, one side showing all 5 of them together at Christmas, the other showing Stephanie and Damien in college. "The past and present together," Madison observed thoughtfully. While everyone sang happy birthday, Damien found himself overwhelmed. 2 years ago, he'd been hollow despite his wealth, ignorant of the 3 miracles who shared his blood. Now, watching his daughters blow out candles surrounded by genuine joy, he understood true abundance. As the party wound down, Stephanie found Damien sitting alone, watching their daughters play tag across the lawn with their friends. "Penny 4, your thoughts," she said, taking the seat beside him. "I was just thinking about deserving," he answered honestly. "I don't deserve any of this happiness after what I did." Stephanie's hand found his. "Life isn't about deserving, Damien. It's about choices. You made a terrible choice once, but you've made better ones every day since." Their relationship had evolved gradually. Co-parents first, then tentative friends, and recently, something more. Not a rekindling of youthful passion, but a deeper connection forged through shared purpose and hard-earned wisdom. As twilight approached, the family walked together through the park. Harper had forgiven enough to hold Damien's hand occasionally. Madison chatted animatedly about summer science camp, Taylor skipped ahead, then back, unable to contain her energy. "Make a wish, Daddy," Taylor called, pointing to the first evening star. Damien looked at Stephanie, who smiled with an openness that would have been unimaginable 2 years earlier. "No need," he replied softly. "Everything I could wish for is right here." Later, as they watched their daughters chase fireflies in the garden of their shared home, the separate residences having merged 6 months earlier, Stephanie leaned against Damien's shoulder. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About the path that brought us here?" "No," she answered thoughtfully. "About the time lost?" "Sometimes. But then I look at them and think perhaps everything happened exactly as it needed to for us to become who we are now." The girls raced inside for bedtime. Damien whispered, "Thank you for our second chance." Stephanie's fingers entwined with his. "Second chances are rare. I'm glad we didn't waste ours." Inside, 3 identical blue-eyed girls prepared for sleep, secure in the knowledge that their family, unconventional as it might be, was finally whole. Their parents' love for them, the one constant that had never wavered, even when separated by misunderstanding and miles. The impossible had become possible, the broken had been mended, and 3 birthday wishes drifted skyward like invisible balloons, carrying dreams that for the first time seemed entirely within reach.